Welcome back. Now, investors are seeing value in the budding tech sector in South Africa. According to a report by the Southern African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, capital flow to startups reached more than R3 billion for the first time last year, with strong interest being seen in startups in the ICT sector. And joining me now as we unpack the findings is the association's CEO, Tshepiso Kobile. Thank you so much for your time, Tshepiso. Now, just to start off with kind of the backdrop that the venture capital industry is working under, what have the conditions looked like for the venture capital industry in South Africa so far, considering also we had that recovery from COVID-19 that was met with monetary policy tightening?
Zinati, thank you so much for having me on the show. If I were to sum up the backdrop in one word, I would say tough.
Yeah.
Just post-COVID, we've seen quite a tough climate globally for VC. We have seen the continent catch up as well. If one looks at the 2023 activity on the continent, there was a decline for the first time in a decade. So South Africa was then not insulated from what we're seeing globally in terms of our VC fund managers and the entrepreneurs that they serve navigating quite a tough environment. So I suppose that's the reason we are hugely excited about the amount of capital that we saw invested, notwithstanding that very difficult climate.
Yeah, indeed, a tough environment, but record capital inflows to South African startups in 2023. What's driven the appeal here?
Factors. It is a significant jump from previous year. In 2022, we were looking at just over R1 billion invested in that year. And if one looks at the cumulative figure, it's sitting at about 11 billion from when we first started the survey in 2010. And I think two major drivers of that significant jump are, firstly, we saw quite a sizable number of co-investments being made by foreign investors, corporates, alongside VC fund managers. So there was a nice diversity in the sources of capital there with co-investments coming through. We also saw some significant large deals happening in that year in particular. There were about 6 deals that were just over 100 million. So those pushed up that figure quite a bit.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting because you talk about these deals where we did have a huge huge capital inflow. So at this point, it would look like it's not really across the board, but just a few deals and where, money is going to a few companies that is significantly boosting capital inflows here.
No, for sure. If one looks at where the bulk of activity was, it certainly wasn't your 100 million type ticket size deals, which is really the nature of venture capital. You would have seen the average deal sizes being far lower than that. So in deal numbers, they were sitting in the lower brackets, but of course the large values are what pushed up the overall invested figure. Yeah.
All right. And I mean, this trend that we are seeing in South Africa now, especially considering where the money is going in the tech sector, the ICT sector, would you say that it is the kind of global trend that we're seeing, or South Africa is just a pot of gold?
I think it is mirroring what's seen globally, in the sense that ICT has consistently been a dominant sector if one looks at our VC surveys over the years. And it's not just in South Africa, it's what we see in the continent as well. We are a continent where we are increasingly seeing a lot of digital penetration happening. We are a continent where we've got a young growing population that is extremely tech savvy and uses tech for everything. So I suppose it's not that much of a surprise that we're seeing that boom in tech entrepreneurs and also in industry that then is supporting a lot of those tech entrepreneurs.
I mean, you also talk about the fact that we've seen, quite a lot of co-investors. Do you expect that to be the trend for a while? What categories of investors are expected to kind of have more appetite for this, investments?
Yes, it's definitely a trend that we see continuing. I think for a number of reasons. Our VC ecosystem as it's currently structured, in fact, you will find that very many of our VC members are actually already collaborating and partnering in some shape or form because that helps them navigate the risky environment. It helps them with collaborating with others in terms of deal sourcing, etc. So by its nature, our environment does already have a lot of collaboration happening, and that's maybe because it's a function of the fact that it's still nascent and there's a lot that's having to happen to build it as a collective. What we also seeing happen is that VC is becoming quite it's becoming a strategy of interest for our
Okay.
institutional investors as well. And we think as their appetite continues to grow in the years to come, a number of them will use co-investment as a tool to get that exposure into the sector. Yeah.
Well, actually, talk to me, I mean, as we wrap up the conversation about, how far VC has come as an investment strategy, but also really its significance in growing business and the economy.
Yeah, we're really starting to see a good shift, and we're feeling quite positive about the outlook, I must say. And I think a lot of it is on the back of great advocacy work that has been happening, where we're suddenly starting to see, even within the public sector narrative, that acceptance and acknowledgement around the need to support a thriving ecosystem for our high growth startups who up to date have sometimes had to leave the country to access capital, which is not right, being a country that has such amazing entrepreneurs. I think there's also an increasing recognition of the value that we can derive from VC, from innovation in terms of meeting just our basic challenges.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the sectors that VC funding is going into, it is edtech, agri-tech, health tech. These are really technologies that are making our real economy more accessible to those that it wasn't traditionally. So I think we see it as a great enabler of just that inclusion, as well as, of course, in the support of SMEs that inherently will bring through employment creation, because that's where it really sits.
Well, thank you so much, Tshepiso, for giving us insights on the latest development in the venture capital industry. That was the CEO of SAVCA, Tshepiso Kobile.